The following is my full talk with Julie DESCH on what is mindfulness. Julie and I met during our 2 year teacher training program. She's been living her entire life with cystic fibrosis, which is a genetic disorder that affects the mucus in your body, and it's also incurable. She has designed her own course called Living Mindfully with Cystic Fibrosis, which you can find on her website, sickandhappy.com. Now, I'm putting this on YouTube because during this talk, we go really deep into detail about some of the inner states of being that can happen inside your inner space, in your mind and in your body, when you close your eyes and meditate. So, if you enjoy things like that, please watch and enjoy this video.
Word. So it looks like it's recording.
It says it's recording. Did you record it to the cloud or to your computer?
I recorded to the computer, but I think I did something wrong. It like recorded it, but it didn't have audio.
Oh,
I don't know how or
that's
why.
very weird.
But I changed some settings, and I think it's fine now. So let me just start you off with sort of the explanation. This is for a video. It's going on YouTube.
Okay.
It's just a simple question. The answer might not be simple at all, but I'm just going to ask it to you before I sort of psych you out. Not like I can actually do that, but
Oh, okay.
the question is, what is mindfulness?
Okay. You want me to,
Yes, please.
you want me to give you my, okay. So my understanding of mindfulness has evolved quite a bit. So when I first started practicing, I kind of went by the John Kabat-Zinn definition of paying attention on purpose in the moment and without any judgment. And it's not that I think that's not accurate. I think that's a very good sort of high level view of what it is. But when you're actually sitting and paying attention to what's going on, I think it has to do with dropping deeper than just what am I noticing. Because I think after a while, that just gets, like, your mind just gets confused because it's just like everything is happening and it doesn't really seem like there's a point. And maybe there isn't. But for me, as I've practiced more and more, what I've come to sort of do in my own practice is get to a place where I feel like it's more like I am the space in which all of this stuff is happening. At the same time that I can kind of watch things arise and then pass away into that same space. So it becomes sort of an experience of one thing just kind of happening in a very beautiful way. And the one thing is my awareness, and it's also part of my awareness is my attention. It's I don't think those two things are separate. They're very much, attention is just kind of focused awareness. So at the same time I am this big space of awareness, I somehow, and I don't know how this happens, but there's a part of that big space of awareness that kind of zooms in on whatever is kind of calling out at the moment for, like, just kind of bubbles up, like, here I am, like, pay attention to me. And that could be anything. So anyway, so there, I'm in the space of awareness, and somehow my attention kind of compresses from this awareness. And so now I'm both the attention and the awareness. And I meet that thing that's bubbling up, which also I am. So none of this makes any sense. But it's so hard to put into words. That's why I mean, it feels like it's all like this one thing happening. But anyway, you know what? So there aren't a lot of times when all of that sort of sinks and becomes clear that that's what's happening. A lot of times it's just craziness, and you know, I just try to ride the waves of the craziness and kind of wait and see if maybe another one of those sync moments will happen. But when they do happen, it's like a wow experience, like, wow, this is so cool. Because it's like, it's kind of very and not just relaxing, it's like, it's almost like living in this body can kind of feel uncomfortable, like with all of its pains and emotions and difficulties. And when that synchronization thing happens, it's almost like that bodysuit thing kind of dissolves a little bit, and that space of oneness just kind of shows up. Like, I love how Tara Brach has this thing that an analogy that she uses when she talks about getting kind of pulling out of the mind stream when you get lost in a story. She talks about that the story thing being like a cloud, and you're in an airplane and you're flying through this cloud, and then all of a sudden when you can let go of it, you just fly out of the cloud. That's kind of what it feels like to me. So I don't know what my definition of that is now, of what I'm experiencing. I know that I got to that experience by using the Jon Kabat-Zinn definition of paying attention to what's arising in the moment on purpose and trying not to have any judgment about it.
It's so interesting. I don't know enough about, and that was perfect, by the way. So I'm just going to use that and probably cut it up. I don't know which parts I will or won't use, but I'm definitely going to use some creative license, and I'll let you know too.
Feel free.
I don't even need to record this rest of it, but something interesting might really pop up. I really want to do like an episode or something like that, a video with you specifically talking about this specific subject, because I feel like a lot of us can really nerd out on it, you know, but like I feel like you in particular, and maybe me in particular, can really like nerd out, like, because I sometimes talk to Ness about this stuff, and like I don't think she's interested in the sort of intricacies as you just kind of went so deep on. And what I think is really interesting is that you describe an experience, right? This sort of not, at least from my knowledge, backed by any sort of mind map that I've ever read in any book, right? I mean, the closest to me that it would sound like would, and I'm not 100% well versed in these in the lore or anything like that, but it sounds like it could be like you're describing like one of the jhanic states, like maybe the fifth one or something like that, or sort of on the way, like, you know, like the 8 jhanas, like
yeah,
like it sounds like it's somewhere in the middle there, like, but beyond the fourth one, which is like the gate or something like that.
Yeah, the one of the formless.
One of the formless ones, like maybe the first formless one
Well,
or something.
yeah, so 5 would be the first formless one, but I don't remember what that is. I forgot like what their descriptions are.
Yeah,
But I
me
don't
either.
think that I've like I've tried a little bit to practice with the jhanas, and I think I might have maybe once or twice gotten to a state of jhana, like the first jhana, but
Yeah,
I have no idea, if I really have.
yeah, me
I just
either.
know
Yeah.
that something kind of like all of a sudden you kind of feel like uh, Michael Taft described it pretty well, like your head becomes a brick and you couldn't possibly move.
Uh-huh.
And it did kind of feel like that, like there was just no way in the world I could move.
Uh,
Um, but at the same time, and it felt really good. I mean, I definitely had like the energy and the happiness, that you're supposed to focus on. But what didn't fit, which is why I don't know if it was jhana, was my mind was going, oh my God, is this jhana?
yeah.
So I don't know if that's supposed to happen.
I remember reading though that the jhanic states, like, they're fleeting. So like you can, especially like if you're in the first formless one, it's sort of like you pop in and out like
Hmm.
continuously until you rest into like the second and third one, where it's sort of like more stable. But anyway, like, enough about the jhanas. There's also another path with wisdom, right? Where there is like a similar state to like the jhanas. Um, but I mean, regardless of any of that, you described this like really like interesting state, that is definitely beyond what John Kabat-Zinn, like that. I feel like the John Kabat-Zinn definition is sort of like the classic definition that everybody
Hmm.
uses, and
Right.
I as well also use that definition just because everybody knows it.
Yeah, and if you're trying to describe it to somebody who hasn't meditated before, who has very little experience meditating, you don't, you got to kind of meet them where they are.
Yeah,
And paying attention to something without judgment is very clear cut. Everybody knows what that means. It may
yeah,
be not easy to do, but everybody knows what that means.
yeah.
Whereas if you say, well, become awareness and notice that you can focus that awareness into attention.
Right.
And then,
Okay, so I'm gonna ask this is not for the video or anything like that. This is just because I'm curious and because I haven't seen an answer anywhere. Um, and so I don't know how much you've read, the canon or anything like that, but I have always wondered about sila, you know, virtue.
hmm
And I have always wondered, so for me, this is the way that I see it, just strictly from experiential, oh, just strictly from experience. Um, so one of the best videos that I've ever seen about describing what mindfulness is the Joseph Goldstein one. And so he has this video on
oh,
YouTube describing what mindfulness is, and he basically describes it as present moment awareness, but it's more than just present moment awareness. Um, it's it's more than just present moment. It's awareness of the present moment in a sort of observing way,
hmm
meaning that you don't get overly pulled into something in the present moment. But
right.
it's more than that as well. It's having the wisdom and learning from the states that you can discern between the different mental states. So you can be um, observing in the present moment, like some experience. But if you're wanting that experience to go away, then that is not mindfulness.
Right.
It's like accepting it is mindfulness. And
Yeah.
so that's his sort of definition of it, right? And he basically
Yeah, I
says,
love
like,
his too.
yeah,
In fact, the last time I taught class, I used his instead of John Kabat-Zinn's because I had listened to a Dharma talk and I was of his definition. And, he talked about, well, it's not just present moment awareness because my Labrador has that.
Right.
But it's knowing, it's this knowing quality while in the present moment, and then without the pushing, pulling thing.
Yep.
So I forgot that I substituted that the last time I taught.
Yeah, and so he's like the Michael Jordan of Western meditation.
He is.
So my question has always been, because that's sort of like how I see it as well, right? But my question has always been why these virtuous states. Like no one ever questions why these virtuous states are the virtuous states. At least I've not heard anyone question that, right? It seems to me that it would be obvious theoretically that you would want love, joy, compassion, gratitude. But why, right? And experientially, and I'm just going to run this by you and see if this fits, right? Experientially, like it seems to be that it's because, let me give you an example. Okay, if I am in my mind and I'm looking at an experience, right? And let's say this experience is pain, right? And if I'm looking at it like Joseph Goldstein says, if I'm looking at the pain in aversively, like wanting it to go away, then it's obviously just going to keep coming back. But if I look at it if I change my viewpoint on it and I accept it, it's not that it goes away, but my relationship to it becomes different. And I gain some sort of equanimity. And so therefore, actually my mind state changes, and also usually the pain actually does go away because you have equanimity towards it. Or at least you're not suffering from it.
Yeah.
And so that's mindfulness turned on aversion, right? But what if you turn mindfulness on love? So you can turn mindfulness on, happiness, love. And when you turn mindfulness on love, I've actually found that the same thing happens, actually. The love kind of goes away. And it becomes, so I want to sort of clarify, like by love, I mean like metta, right? If you turn mindfulness onto metta and you stop cultivating it, right? You stop that sort of active cultivation, which, if you were doing a cultivation meditation, you sort of stop actively cultivating it. It's there, but you turn your mindfulness onto it, then that metta just kind of goes away because it's an energetic state, and you're just left with equanimity, right? Okay, and bear with me. If you are in some sort of equanimous state, meaning that let's say you're in the felt sense of that experience that you were describing to me, that sort of where you're dropping that into. If you turn your awareness onto that state, it stays. Basically, if I'm in some sort of place where I'm really being with everything in a loving state, and I'm in a non-judgmental state, and I'm somatically feeling equanimity, and I turn my mindfulness on equanimity, it does not change. That has been my experience. It's like if I pay attention to equanimity, my equanimity does not change into something else. It stays as equanimity. And so in my video of how to meditate, I had this line at the end that said attention equals love, right? And it was put there just sort of like for effect, but it was also put there because this is describing this feeling and it's way over the head of anybody who's a beginner, right?
Mhm.
But I personally have experienced that the somatic feeling of mindfulness, pure mindfulness, possibly a state that you're describing, is somatically identical to equanimity. Um, and I am postulating that that's where sila comes from. Like, where do these sort of like virtuous mind states come from? It's possibly because when you fully drop into mindfulness, all that's left is equanimity, or something that's like equanimity. I don't even know if I'm using the right words here, but yeah, let me hear your thoughts on that. So that was my question to you. Where does sila come from?
So I get, I when you mention turning your mindfulness towards equanimity, it doesn't change. That makes sense, because to me, mindfulness kind of is almost equivalent to equanimity. That's the no pushing, pulling concept. It's just like being with things as they are, period,
Yeah.
and being okay with that. So sila, my understanding of, so when you mean where does it come from, or why is it emphasized?
Basically, why is it like, like it's sort of like taken for granted, like seal, like these virtuous mind states, right? But
Right.
who made, why it could easily just say hatred is virtuous, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
Um,
So
so
my understanding is the Buddha actually said, cultivate these mind states.
yeah,
These are, and he was all about not suffering, right?
yep,
So if you think of it in terms of um, lessening suffering, or getting rid of suffering,
that's
it seems
yes,
like sila is the way you do that. Like you cultivate those mind states in order to diminish suffering, or
that's
in
yeah,
order to combat the suffering that, like, whatever's coming up, if you offer it loving kindness or compassion or whatever, those states feel good. They don't cause suffering. They actually cause suffering to diminish.
that's a way better explanation. Yes, right. Because what you said is like the Buddha said it, right? Which means that he must have gotten it from somewhere, meaning that he must have gotten it from his personal experience.
Yeah.
And yes, that
Well,
makes total
so
sense. Yeah.
that, the retreat I just did was on the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and Ajahn Sona, the guy who did the Dharma talks every night, was very emphatic about this point, that the Buddha, you actually want to cultivate these states. You want to put a lot of energy into cultivating these states. And that was kind of directly from, I mean, I don't know the Buddhist, canon well enough to say where it's from, but Ajahn Sona does.
Yeah,
And he
yeah.
was saying, this is what you're supposed to do in order to, um, you know, to practice well in the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So, in terms of the body, if if you're having issues with mindfulness of pain or whatever's going on in the body, you deal with that and you come to an equanimous state by cultivating sila, and cultivating, not sila, I shouldn't say that, but cultivating these positive mind states.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
found that I find that that's pretty darn true. Like, I haven't been practicing a lot of metta these days, but for a while there I was, and it's amazing how good it feels. um oh, I know, that's what came to my mind when you were saying, but if I turn my mindfulness onto the metta, it goes away. To me, I see those as 2 different things. Like, there's mindfulness and there's metta, and
Yep.
And you're supposed to do both of them. It's not like you turn mindfulness on to metta and be equanimous about it so that it dissolves or breaks off into pieces.
Mm-hmm.
The way you would turn mindfulness into pain and see that, well, it's actually, tugging sensations, and it's these thoughts and this emotion. So, you know what I mean? It's like you don't necessarily disentangle
Yeah.
metta like that.
Yeah. I'm a rebel, but no, I mean, I normally don't do that, right? But I was just trying to sort of like make a point, I suppose, that like if you actually do that, and you sort of let go of the metta, then the metta just goes away. But if you like, it's like, I guess my point is kind of like you can't really let go of the equanimity. It just sort of is already there.
Yeah, it's basically the open state of awareness.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of, and that doesn't ever go anywhere. Whereas everything else, including feelings of metta, come and go.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is a great conversation. This is the stuff I like to talk about, but I mean, I'm not gonna make videos about this yet. Not this kind of stuff, not yet, because it's way too advanced for. Oh man, YouTube is strange.
Are you getting weird comments? I loved
No.
your last video, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That was wonderful.
The
Why are we doing this?
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna call it The Real Practice is Love, but then Ness put me in my place. She was like, if you call it that, then no one is gonna find your video. Okay.
Yeah, you got to use search engine optimization
Yeah.
protocols.
uh, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to build up like a little library of like basic mindfulness stuff before I get into like more advanced topics. But eventually, like, I just ordered a copy of the Visuddhimagga.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've read like excerpts of like of it, and I've read like um summarized parts of it, but like to read the full thing, obviously translated,
Yeah.
but
I've never read that. It that's my understanding is that's like where that's one of the places where really really cool kind of far out stuff is discussed, like magic powers and that kind
yeah,
of stuff that happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
and this whole, I mean, like, truthfully, like, I don't really even care, but it's very interesting that it's written in there, which means because either somebody with a really interesting imagination made it up, or
Hmm.
these like states that they describe, because it describes a lot of states like that you can get
Hmm.
into. Like, these states actually exist. And
Yeah.
when Ness and I, when we went to Malaysia, we met this guy um, on this island. Um, and I don't know if he was lying or not. I suspect that he might have just told the story from something he heard, but he said that he used to train in like the ninja arts, and
Hmm.
he once entered this state where he was like in a waterfall, and he slowed his heart rate down to like 4 beats a minute, and
Whoa.
then he kept slowing his heart rate down until he was essentially dead.
Hmm.
And then they his brother found him, took him to the hospital, and his brother and his dad and the doctor were trying to resuscitate him, and he stayed in this state for like a day and a half, and the
Wow.
doctor pronounced him dead. And then after a day and a half, he woke up, and he assured his brother and his dad that don't worry, I was just in this state. And
Hmm.
I thought, when I first heard that story, I thought, wow, like, that sounds pretty crazy. I don't know if I
Hmm.
believe you. And then I read this thing that says that the Visuddhimagga actually describes a state exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
A state, and then you basically have to, before you enter that state, you have to mentally set when you're going to wake up. Otherwise,
Otherwise, you won't,
yeah, you
probably.
won't.
Yeah. Wow.
I'm like, is that like
Dang.
someone, either has a really good imagination or like these states have actually been achieved? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know, that sounds like scientifically impossible, but
Well, I mean, a lot of
yeah,
things that have apparently happened sound pretty, like, monks who sit in meditation for days upon days without any movement.
right.
I mean, how do you do that?
I
Unless you
know.
totally like just crank down your metabolism so that, you don't have to get up and pee, or, I mean,
Right, right.
I don't know. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
It seems like you would freeze to death too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who
Well,
knows?
that'll be interesting reading.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna make a video about it once I finish reading. It's a really long book, but
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
Something to do in quarantine.
yeah, thank you so much for the talk.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
I really love nerding out on this stuff. And I just want to end the conversation by I don't you still have a few minutes?
Yeah.
Just kind of asking how you are and just chewing the fat a little bit.
Hey, watch the mic. Watch the mic.
Happy. Happy.
What's the cap?
Make happy.
Hey, let's go change your butt, huh?